Hi everyone, it's Mariah Rossel with A Journey of Beauty. So one of the topics I find myself talking about a lot is this idea of consent, right? Consent is huge, consent is so important. And the thing that I found recently is that I no longer want to focus on consent. So for instance, you're at work, your boss comes up to you and says, "Hey, can you have this spreadsheet to me by the end of the day?" You are inherently going to say, "Oh yeah, sure boss, no problem," right? Presuming that doing spreadsheets is in fact your job, right? But did you really consent to doing that spreadsheet? Well, your boss pays you to do your job, and so there is this implied consent that you will do what your job description is because you have your job and you're getting paid for it. And part of the implied consent is that you'll do what your boss asks you to do, right? And so there was consent. But how much of it is this actual true authenticity rising, this yes coming from the deep core of your body, this second chakra, yes, this is what I want. And how much of that consent is coming from, well, I said I'd do it, so I'm going to do it. It comes from obligation, it comes from expectation, and I feel generally okay with it. I don't feel degraded or put down. I don't feel diminished. I feel like I'm doing my job, right? And so there is consent. But I think we need to go beyond consent. We need to go beyond, "Oh yeah, I'll do that, that sounds good," to, "Yes, this is what I want, this brings me so much joy." And if we can look at sex consensually in these terms, in terms of consent equals joy, then we don't even have to ask the question of, "Hey, do you want to do this with me?" Because we will know unequivocally from that spark in their eyes, that smile, the energy that they're radiating, the veracity at which they engage in sexual activity with us, or all those little things that are leading up to the sexual activity, that the consent is there because there is passion, there is joy. Nobody wants to say, "Oh yeah, let's have sex, that sounds good." We want to be ravished and desired and feel that energy bubbling up and coming out from our being as we honor and love the other person or people as this deep expression of love and joy and beauty. That is so much greater than consent. That is so much greater than yes. So many people are teaching consent is not no. Consent is not silence. Consent is yes. And I want to challenge that consent should be more than yes. Consent should be yes with all the enthusiasm and the passion that you have in your heart. And I don't want it to just say that this is consent sexually. I want to see people doing this with everything in their life. How do you look at, "It's my day to clean the toilet," with that same enthusiasm, that same excitement, that same passion? No, cleaning the toilet is nowhere near as much fun, at least on a biological, physiological level, as sex. But let's look at, how can I say, I get to create this beautiful space for me to cleanse, for me to go through my processes of my day. I can create this sparkly home and joy by cleaning my toilet, or by making dinner, or whatever it is that you're doing, right? Because we can find the joy and the passion and the ferocity in the amazing. We can find that peak state having sex. We can find that blissful moment on a beautiful date. We can find our joy dancing and grooving on the dance floor. We can find excitement and relaxation laying on the beach. But the key is to use all of these places where we're learning these peak state experiences to find how can we take that joy, that excitement, that bliss into our every single moment. To find the beauty in the mundane. Because it's not the mundane, it's still magical, it's still miraculous. And then to look at consent for those actions too. Because while we can say consent to sex is huge, and it is, but are you remembering to consent to hanging out and watching TV? Are you consenting to every food that you put in your body? Because so often we don't even think about it. We're not even aware that we are giving consent to our lifestyles. We aren't aware that we are making our lives because we're laissez-faire and we just let it go. We say, this is just how it is. This is how life is, and I accept it. Instead of saying, I choose to create this amazing beauty in my life. I consent to every single action that happens. I consent to being raw and vulnerable in my joy. I consent to looking at my shame. I consent to it all. Because until I actually view everything that I do as something by which I must consent, then I am not fully in my power. I am not fully responsible. So to consent to something means to take responsibility for it. And so how do we take responsibility for everything we do and check in? Always, continually, moment after moment. Am I choosing to this? Am I consenting to this? And if I am consenting with this, then there should never be any regrets. There may be lessons, but there cannot be regrets because I chose to do it. And so I chose to eat 5 gallons of ice cream watching TV the other day. Or I chose to eat chocolate instead of train for the marathon. Whatever it is, you chose to do it. So by seeing it as a consent, as your permission and your choice, you empower yourself to live the life that you want to. And when you transcend consent into this raw, passionate, vulnerable yes that vibrates every cell of your body, you no longer have to keep checking in with your body and saying, do I consent? Do I want this? Because deep in your heart, deep in your soul, you're hearing, yes, this is exactly what I want. This is exactly what I'm choosing to be doing right now. I don't want to do anything else. This moment is exactly my choice, exactly my desire. And so when you feel that, there is no longer a need to check in and ensure that you consent. And this is not to say to not ask other people if they consent, but it is knowing that when you do consent, and you can also see when somebody's just having the greatest time, the questions for consent are different. It's not like, oh my gosh, you are writhing in pleasure. Do you want to have sex still? It's, I see your joy, I see your pleasure. Would you like to continue down this pathway? You're still getting that consent by saying, would you like to continue down this pathway? And you're acknowledging that you see this transcendence of consent, you're seeing this joy, you're seeing this pleasure, you're seeing this beauty. So play with that, love your life, and really feel this raw vulnerability that can come from the second chakra and explode all over your life with desire.